Hello, welcome to Asian American Life. I'm Ernabel Demillo, and I'm hosting our show safely from my home in New Jersey. During these difficult and challenging times, our team at Asian American Life wanted to share the untold stories of our Asian American communities in the tri-state area. But because of the coronavirus pandemic, our city is on lockdown and we're all quarantined at home. So for this episode, we're going to share previously recorded stories, and Rayner Ramirez will have an update on the Museum of Chinese in Americas and how they were impacted by the fire and coronavirus. Here's also what's ahead on our show. Minnie Roh shares the contributions of Asian Americans for April's Autism Awareness Month. And Kyung Yoon meets a filmmaker who chronicles his journey with multiple sclerosis. This and more on Asian American Life.
70 Mulberry Street has been a cornerstone of New York City's Chinatown for more than 100 years. First as an elementary school, and for the past 40 years it housed not-for-profit organizations that provided art and social services for both the young and the old. So when the fire tore through the building, the community came out in support and helped recover what was spared by the flames. News of the five-alarm fire at 70 Mulberry Street spread quickly across New York City's Chinatown community.
I was home when I heard about the fire, and people were calling us. Neighbors were saying, "You better come down here, the building's on fire."
When I heard that there was a fire at 70 Mulberry, I ran all the way just to Mulberry, a few blocks away, hysterical, just hysterically crying.
So only HG went down, and he didn't come home until 2 in the morning.
About 200 firefighters and emergency personnel responded to the fire around 8:40 p.m. on January 23rd, just 2 days before the Lunar New Year. Already down from the racist backlash around the coronavirus, members of the Chinatown community watched the fire as if the prophecy of an inauspicious year of the metal rat was unfolding before their very eyes. When the fire was finally contained the next day, Mayor Bill de Blasio vowed to rebuild.
But it's a beautiful historic building. We will restore it. You will see it just like it looks today. It will be back.
But those with a deep connection to 70 Mulberry Street feared the permanent scar the fire would leave behind.
As we saw the fire burning on January 23rd, I was frankly just hysterical, but even more so as I thought about those 5 institutions that were represented in this iconic building.
70 Mulberry Street was built in 1893 as an elementary school, PS 23, that served a wave of immigrants from Europe and then China. The design became a template for hundreds of elementary schools in New York City. When the school was closed in the 1970s, the city-owned building became the headquarters of 5 organizations serving the community. A senior center run by the Chinatown Planning Council, the Chinatown Manpower Project, which provides job training and English classes for new immigrants, the United East Athletic Club that promoted sports and games for the youth, the Chen Dan Center, and the extensive archives of the Museum of the Chinese in the Americas, or MoCA.
Not only would 70 Mulberry be the holistic center of Chinatown, but the organizations were representative of any community. The pillars that you really want to form a strong community: arts and culture, the history, seniors, young people.
Nancy Yao Masbach is the president of MoCA. The building contained the museum's collection of more than 85,000 artifacts that catalog the legacy of Chinese Americans.
There's so much in the Chinese American immigration story with the Exclusion Act and the Transcontinental Railroad and all the discrimination that happened thereafter that these are so important.
As MoCA's director of collections, Ye Ma knew what was at stake.
As archivists, we know the first 48 hours is very important for us to recover our archives.
News coverage and social media helped MoCA galvanize people beyond the Chinatown community to save what was spared by the fire.
I think it's the fear of losing your own story, maybe your grandmother's story, or maybe your grandparents' family album that resonates across all people.
Within a week, city officials salvaged 20% of MoCA's archives, among other things.
And the very first thing that came out of the building was not a box, but it was actually a live orchid. Everyone cheered because something alive came out of the building.
Dion Dong and her husband H.T. Chen are the co-founders of the Chen Dance Center. 70 Mulberry Street has been their home since 1980, when the Juilliard graduates turned to Chinatown to share their love of dance.
In the 1970s and 1980s, there was no place for community children to study dance seriously. And we just felt that because the families could not leave the community, then why don't we bring it here?
In addition to performing for the community, they offered free dance classes to children of new immigrants, many of whom were garment workers.
Movement is essential for child development. And when you live in a small apartment in Chinatown, you don't have an opportunity to move around and be active like suburban kids. We know our program does much more than teach steps.
Over the years, the Chen Dance Company expanded. They opened a theater where they featured the works of up-and-coming artists and a few more studios to accommodate more than 500 students a week. It's in those studios that H.T. Chen choreographed pieces that brought Chinese-American history to life.
So what I do is, as education director, I take excerpts from each piece and I put them in an education program, create a study guide, and narrate it so that it becomes accessible to the students. And in this way, Chinese-American history comes alive before the students through dance.
Ad hoc fundraisers like this have popped up within the Asian American community and beyond.
The community has been incredible, and other people have done fundraisers for the community, and amazing, selling artwork and galvanizing folks, and it's an unprecedented experience for me.
Keep clapping for Chen Dance Center. Give it up for them.
We're like vagabonds, operating out of our cell phones and operating from one single laptop and with a little wheelie bag with all the sound equipment going from location to location. Once we're in a dance studio without students, we're home again.
A neighbor has allowed them to work out of an empty commercial space across from the building they considered home for 40 years.
Every day, I still come here because I come here over 40 years.
Yes! Is that the sewing machine?
Just before New York City went on lockdown due to the coronavirus, MoCA was able to salvage the remainder of their collection.
The sewing machine was the mainstay of the family, not only for financial reasons because people were garment workers, but also for clothing that was made for the family and resized for older siblings and younger siblings.
95% of MoCA's collection had been retrieved, awaiting restoration from smoke and water damage.
Each box that comes out, each item, not only makes up a part of the Chinese-American narrative, but I really do suggest that it makes a part of the American narrative.
Facing the fire and the pandemic, the Chen Dance Company is determined to continue writing their narrative, salvaging some of their archives, costumes, and a stone statue of the Buddha, unscathed by the fire. For Asian American Life, I'm Rayner Ramirez.
I'm Minnie Roh. During the month of April, homes and landmarks across the country will light up blue in honor of National Autism Awareness Month. Over the years, the number of individuals living with autism spectrum disorder continues to rise. And we wanted to highlight some of the many advances made in this field, including the contributions of Asian Americans who are creating positive change for those living with this disorder.
Everybody do this. Everybody do this.
This may seem like a typical school,
You measure 1 cup.
where students learn math, go to gym class, create beautiful music and masterpieces in art. But this is not a typical school. Every one of these students at the Reed Academy in Oakland, New Jersey, is living with autism spectrum disorder. Students here not only learn academics, but also learn how to live independently, engaging in real-life scenarios.
Count your teeth, okay?
At the nurse's office, Matthew is practicing for a trip to the dentist. Jonathan already went shopping for his ingredients, and now he's cooking his lunch.
Tell me what happens in this room.
So this room is our apartment. Students learn how to make a bed, they learn how to keep a room clean, they learn how to fold their laundry and put their laundry away. I know that what we're doing at Reed Academy, I know that the skills that we're teaching our kids and the lessons that we're teaching them and the functional skills that we're teaching them are going to literally make an imprint in their lives.
According to the Center for Disease Control, 1 out of every 59 children in the United States is living with autism. ASD is 4 times more likely to affect boys than girls and occurs in all racial, ethnic, and socioeconomic groups. Warning signs include delayed speech, and in severe cases, an inability to communicate, an aversion to touch, repetitive or restrictive patterns of behavior, poor social skills, ADHD, and an avoidance of eye contact. Julie Azuma is the mother of a child living with autism. Her daughter is now 30 and in a group home. But when Miranda was growing up in the 1990s, Azuma remembers the frustration of not being able to find the right learning materials that were recommended for her daughter by psychologists.
I want you to get blocks with no numbers or letters on it. I want you to get a big sock and a little sock, and a big ball and a little ball. I want you to get pictures of everybody in your family. There's a lot of stuff to try and put together.
Azuma created a company called Different Roads to Learning to help other parents in her situation. Today, her company supplies materials to autism schools across the country. Reed Academy is one of her clients.
Back in the day, people really felt that we were the place to come for the things that they needed. Because we're so specific about applied behavior analysis and verbal behavior intervention, they knew to come to us.
Especially coming from an Asian family, I actually see a lot of this hidden in the communities where the parents are kind of like, I would say, ashamed to talk about it, and they're ashamed to admit it. So they hide this disorder from their relatives, from their friends, and even from the community. And as a result, the children really don't get the help that they need.
Lisa Yang and her husband have 3 children. Their youngest 2 are on the spectrum.
My son wasn't diagnosed until he was much older, even though he presented with some of these very challenging behaviors, like the screaming, and he was very difficult to toilet train.
In her quest to help her children, Yang discovered what she calls a woeful inadequacy in funding for autism research in this country. It was an alarming red flag to her, especially when coupled with CDC data that shows in the past 2 decades, the number of individuals living with ASD in the United States has more than doubled.
When you look at the amount of funding, not only from private sources, but also from government sources like NIH, you really don't see that kind of funding that should be commensurate with huge numbers of people that are going to be going old. And how are they going to find jobs? Where are they going to get support system from, the family, or whether it's a public system?
Yang and her husband established the Hock E. Tan and K. Lisa Yang Center for Autism Research at MIT, which has produced significant research papers, such as this one, which links bacterial infections in a pregnant woman's digestive tract to a higher risk of having a child with autism. Recently, the Journal of the American Medical Association published a similar study looking at Swedish babies born over a 30-year period whose exposure to infection while in utero significantly increased their risk for ASD and depression. Guoping Feng is a neuroscientist with the Tan Yang Center.
So there's no one common thing cause autism. The major cause contributing factor for autism spectrum disorder is genetic factors. Even within the genetics, there are many, many different genes. Hundreds of them have been linked to the autism spectrum disorder.
Dr. Feng says there are an infinite combination of factors, environmental and diet included, that could cause ASD, and no one person with autism is identical to another. But Dr. Feng is cautiously optimistic that his team has successfully isolated one possible cause, a monogenetic mutation, otherwise a single gene mutation that can be linked to some symptoms of ASD.
We have now much better understanding of the molecular, cellular, and circuit mechanisms of autism spectrum disorders. Now we can think about how do we develop a treatment for these problems.
Back at Reed Academy, it's goodbye until tomorrow, when they do it all over again. Until they turn 21 and age out of school-based autism services to enter the Medicaid system. Over the next decade, an estimated 500,000 teens with ASD will enter adulthood.
Sad fact is that there are not enough excellent quality adult day programs. And for a lot of adults, they end up sitting at home. And when an adult is sitting at home, they're not working, they're not a resource in the community, they're losing many of the skills that they have spent years learning in school, and it really becomes a disservice as a community and ultimately as a country. I think that we are really falling short on.
In order to bridge the gap between the school entitlement funding and Medicaid, Nadesan spearheaded a social enterprise called Greens Do Good, a 4-season hydroponic vertical farm that will eventually employ adults with autism, with the proceeds from the farm going back into Read Next, the foundation's adult program. Nadesan hopes to make Greens Do Good a model for other nonprofits.
We're all doing it with the same goals in mind, and we're all doing it to make a difference in the lives of kids and families with autism.
According to JAMA, the total cost of supporting an individual with ASD over his or her lifetime can amount to just over $2 million, most of that due to loss of parental earnings. By the year 2025, the total cost of caring for Americans with ASD is expected to rise to about $461 billion. I'm Minnie Roh for Asian American Life.
I'm Kyung Yoon. What happens when a renowned filmmaker turns the camera on himself to document his journey with a devastating neurological disease? If you're Jason DaSilva, the result is an Emmy Award-winning film called When I Walk that was released in 2013. Now his second film in a planned trilogy is again winning hearts, minds, awards, and rave reviews from audiences. But for Jason, his most important viewer is one person, his son.
Thank you. Oh, you're welcome.
Like many new dads, Jason DaSilva wanted to document every moment of his son's life ever since little Jace was born in 2013. But for this 41-year-old filmmaker and disability rights activist who was diagnosed with primary progressive multiple sclerosis when he was just 25, the project is more than personal.
I started making When We Walk when my son was born. So when he was first born, and then I had been filming it for three and a half years. And then him and Well, his mother took him to Texas. So all of a sudden my world was, I lost my child, so I lost my partner, so they moved to Texas and started a new life.
The two of us being basically confined to New York as long as we are a couple.
The film captures the strains, arguments, and heartbreaking choices made by the young couple as Jason's now ex-wife decides that she can make a better life for herself and their son in Austin, Texas, leaving Jason in New York where he can receive the 24/7 care he needs to live independently. Faced with this choice, Jason began researching what services a person with disabilities can receive in Austin, Texas.
So Medicaid is the healthcare system for people with disabilities and anybody low income. The way that it works is people with disabilities like myself, unless you're super rich, you do need to be on Medicaid.
But Medicaid in Texas will only cover 24/7 care if the person with disabilities is institutionalized in a nursing home. To be closer to his son, Jason tried moving to Austin to live in a nursing home. But he soon realized that this meant not only giving up his independence, but his work and career. Plus, he wasn't able to see his son very often at the nursing home.
So if I wanted to continue doing that, I'd make the tough choice of being by my son, living in a nursing home. I wouldn't be able to see him that much. And versus living in New York and him coming to visit every once in a while. So that's where I am right now. It's a really, really hard decision that I had to make. But, I did it, and there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about it. Every morning when I wake up, I think about my son and how he's doing.
How was school today?
From New York, Jason interacts with his son mostly through a screen.
So I interface with my son through the phone. So that's not a natural relationship for a father to have with his son or for a son to have with his father. So it is really hard. So I can't do everything. I can't play with him and scold him or just be a father. I can't do that in that same way. Like what I understand his perspective. What kid wants to sit there and talk to his dad for maybe 15 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever he wants to do? Who wants to do that every day?
Jason says what keeps him going is his son and his work to empower people with disabilities. In addition to his filmmaking, Jason has created Access Map, a crowdsourced tool for rating and sharing reviews on disability-friendly restaurants, businesses, and other public places.
Huge entryway, totally flat, no lip here whatsoever. I'm gonna give this place 5 stars.
He also runs a nonprofit called Access Lab, which serves people with disabilities through media and technology.
One big theme is I'm telling the stories of the unheard voices. So people that don't have the possibility of telling their own story, for me as a filmmaker, I can tell their story.
Meanwhile, I get recognition for When I Walk.
And the winner goes to When I Walk.
This award is dedicated to all people with disabilities from around the world that are putting their stories on screen.
In addition to industry recognition, like the Emmy Award for his previous film, When I Walk, Jason has been honored for his contributions to New York City and the Asian American community, most recently in 2019 at the Gotham Award ceremony with the Made in New York Award and the Coalition for Asian American Children and Families Catalyst for Change Award.
So my career, what I do, I've done a lot of things, but the one thing that's standing throughout everything I do is I'm the voice for people with disabilities and their supporters. and I will continue doing that.
And Jason is now at work on his third and final film of the trilogy called When They Walk, which is about mapping places of accessibility around the world. I'm Kyung Yoon for Asian American Life.
That's our show for now. If you want to learn more about these stories and also what we're working on, be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Asian American Life. On behalf of my colleagues, we want to thank you for your support and your viewership. Coming up next month, we're going to have a special report on the coronavirus pandemic and how it's impacting the Asian American community. From unsung heroes who are helping others to my report on the rising racist attacks against Asian Americans. And we're going to close our show by taking a look at Asian American campaigns that are trending on social media. And please remember these words: racism is a virus. I'm Ernabel Demillo. We'll see you next time.